Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, a show where everything and anything can and will be sorted. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Brice.
And like the reed, I am going to take this time to go through your ears, wafting like the wind.
Let's put on some Enya.
I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine that you are listening to a podcast where two idiots try to determine things that are not part of the Harry Potter universe being sorted into the houses of Hogwarts.
Yeah, that's the basic conceit of the show, and our guest is the wonderful Katy Dolle.
Hello.
Previously on for sorting moments within The Bachelor, now we're zenning it up a little bit, and we're going to be sorting yoga poses.
I'm so excited.
So
there's something about talking about yoga that makes I'm going to breathe a little bit more into my
I'm going to get on my
speaking.
lower register.
Mhm.
So, sorry, you had something to say.
I was just going to give a few positives for you. In addition to having wildly extensive vocabulary as far and like knowledge base,
encyclopedic knowledge of
when
The
it comes to
Bachelor.
yoga. Not The Bachelor, the yoga. You're also an actress, filmmaker around the Los Angeles area. You host Scramble Comedy at the Pack.
This is true.
And you've been seen on BuzzFeed and Smosh and
all over the place.
You're all over the place.
All over the frickin' place. I've yeah.
Thank you
Indie
again
films,
and welcome.
whatever. Thank you.
So you've taught yoga.
Yes. So, fun fact about me: right after college, when I moved back to LA, I did a 200-hour teacher training, and I taught yoga for a few years. And then I still practice about 3 or 4 times a week. I do hot yoga. Shout out Moto Yoga LA. That's where I go.
Oh, is that the Koreatown one?
There's one on La Brea. There's one that I go to, which is in Echo Park. And then there's another one in Venice.
If you are not from Los Angeles and steeped in LA culture and you're like, what is hot yoga? It's what it sounds like. You're doing yoga, but then they put up the heat so much that it's like a sauna and you sweat a lot more.
It's amazing. I just sweat it all out. So yeah, when y'all put it out that you wanted me to come on the show and asked me what I was an expert in, I was like, well, these are the 2 things.
And I'm wildly out of shape. Let's do this.
Yeah. Have you ever done yoga before, Reed?
I feel like I probably have done about as much as anybody who's like had that day in PE class. We're like, let's do some stretching instead of running the mile.
Okay.
But like very, very limited knowledge base.
And what about you, Michael?
I have had exposure to yoga in like multiple forms. I've never done hot yoga though.
Okay.
It's so
I know,
awkward to be in a room with people who are ripped, and then I'm like, hey guys, where are the chips? Like that's my entire existence in this town.
but so I know my way around the poses for the most part, although, you know, they'll exhaust me from time to time.
Absolutely.
Should be worth stating again that our sorting biases are that Michael is a Ravenclaw.
Yes.
Katie is a Gryffindor. And I am a Hufflepuff.
Indeed. So we're going to start with a few basic yoga poses, and then we're going to get into the more expert ones, I suppose.
Sure. So I think that we should start off with like the most basic of yoga poses, which is mountain pose, Tadasana, which is basically just standing with your hands at your sides.
Okay.
So
I can do that one.
You know, what would we sort that as?
Well, so in that situation, it's really just about stillness, correct?
It's very still, and many times when you're put in this pose, the yoga instructor will be like, okay, class, now I want you to just breathe and close your eyes and chill out and think about your intentions. Right. So maybe I would say it might be a Ravenclaw type pose because you're put into this pensive state.
Yeah, I'd say it's a Ravenclaw or a Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff because probably I think like, well, I'd say Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff is like yoga overall.
Right.
And so obviously we need to sort of curb some of our thought process there of being like, it's going to probably fall into these two, but maybe we can reach beyond. But I do agree with you that I think Ravenclaw is more pensive, reflective than necessarily the other houses. They're definitely ones who are going to be like, let's go down this deep well of thought.
Yeah. And not, unlike some of the other like more basic poses, it's like not like the most active as far as compared to the more advanced moves.
Sure.
But it is more like that you are standing up, you have to like probably be a little bit aware of like where your body is,
Mhm.
what your spine's doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, your stomach muscles. I know they're always wanting you to keep awareness of your core.
Oh, if you want like the greatest bit of mind fuckery on that sort of stuff, I know it was out a while ago. Did either of you ever use We Fit?
Oh yeah.
I think
I
that
tried
was
it.
my only
'Cause,
scale
like,
for a while.
Because like the whole thing, it's got like a balance board, and the
Yeah.
minute that you stand on that thing, it's showing you where your center of balance is, and it immediately made me like acutely aware. I was like, oh, when I stand on just like a regular basis, I lean back on my heels like a little bit.
And that's very common. I mean, people, that's part of yoga, and especially this pose, is that you're trying to press down through all four corners of your feet and
Mhm.
have an even weight distribution, which is easier said than done
yeah.
because people don't notice in everyday life where their center of gravity is
Mhm.
until you call attention to it. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I'm always leaning forward or I'm always kind of leaning back.
Yeah.
Which makes me now think even more that this is a Ravenclaw, because Ravenclaws also are like sometimes hyper aware of situations.
Exactly.
Like,
That's what I definitely think this is a Ravenclaw. What else do we have for like
So
more basic poses?
Yeah. So downward facing dog. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the classic, you know.
Yeah, that's the one. It looks like you're trying to like build up a little pyramid with your whole body.
yeah, your butt's in the air.
Yeah,
and
your hands are on the floor. So are your feet, and you're kind of pushing. Yeah, like you said, you're pushing your butt back up in the air.
making a triangle with
Making
your
a tri-
body.
Sure.
I think this is one of the other ones that like this is where you're starting to feel like, oh man, I'm gonna actually get a stretch. I'm gonna actually feel this a little bit, but it's also still accessible for people who like might have some mobility issues or any sort of like things like about physical ability that's gonna be more challenging, but it's still something they can do and feel like they're getting a good workout.
Yeah, well, because you're stretching your hamstrings, but you're also strengthening your arms. Like your whole body is involved in this pose.
That's probably why it's always involved in like the basic routine when you're like resetting your cycle or whatever you
I
call
love
it.
that you
right?
resetting your cycle.
What? Oh god, why did my voice have to crack like a teenager at that point too?
It was just cute the way you said it. I was like, what is Reed trying to say? Oh, right, a sun salute.
Yeah, like the whole thing, because you always
You go
every
through-
time I've ever done a yoga class, we'll do the pose that the teacher says, but then you reset the cycle, but you usually go down and you do the snake one, and then you go into the dog one.
Mm.
Right. So you would go forward into chaturanga to plank pose and then to chaturanga. So you would like do a push up almost and get down on the
Yeah,
ground.
and that's where
then
you're,
you
like-
push up into cobra.
Yeah,
Is that
the
what you mean by
cobra
the
is where
snake
your
one?
your legs are like just kind of like out on the floor,
Yeah,
and then
just
you're
to-
pushing your.
Just to give you a visual, plank is when like you're perfectly parallel to the.
It's a push up position.
Yeah, it's a push-up position, but your arms are like your elbows are.
Yeah, and then
usually
the cobra
on the-
one is almost like you're like, okay, this if we're with the floor now, let's do a 90-degree angle with my body.
Mhm.
With your upper body.
Yeah, my upper body's gonna try to go straight in the air, and then I'm gonna keep my staying also laying on my stomach somehow.
Mhm.
Yeah. So which of these are we're going to sort the
We're
down
starting
dog.
downward dog.
We
Yeah.
just got a little,
We threw out a bunch of other poses
I'm
real
just saying
fast.
it's part of the cycle that you,
it is. It's part of the when you're doing a vinyasa is what they call
vinyasa.
it.
That's what I meant to say.
What is a vinyasa?
A vinyasa flow is basically in between poses, like Reed was saying, to kind of cleanse your palate.
Mm.
You would go back to downward facing dog, and then you would go forward into plank, lower yourself to the ground, press up into a back bend of your choice, which could be either upward facing dog or cobra, and then you would come back to downward facing dog. So
Okay.
that's a vinyasa. And then eventually, if you're going into a full sun salute, you'd jump your feet up towards your hands,
Mhm.
and then you would come back up to standing.
Yes.
And then you do the whole thing over again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So that's a sun salute. However, I think that we should dial it back and get back to just simple stuff, which is the down dog.
Oh yeah. I was trying to just give some context for these folks.
All
Oh no,
right.
it's a lot of context. I mean, I think it's great. Down dog, I would say,
I think it might also still be a Ravenclaw.
really? See, I don't think so.
Okay. Why?
I think that it's a Gryffindor. I think that whenever I'm a yoga teacher puts me in this pose, they say that like, oh, you need to take 5 breaths, and this is a quote unquote rest pose.
But
between
you
the other
do
things.
feel-
but
you
I
do
don't feel
feel-
like I'm resting at
Yeah.
all. I'm actively doing a lot to stay in this pose, and it takes a lot of concentration
Mhm.
and courage, I guess, to stay in that.
So you're
rather
leaning
than,
Gryffindor.
I think it's a Gryffindor because many times I would rather be in child's pose than being in downward facing dog. It's not as restful for me.
I see. I can agree with you on that. I suppose maybe we should just go through the sun salute as we inadvertently sort of listed off a bunch of quick poses.
Sure. So then I guess we can, because I have some more advanced poses as
Sure.
well, but we can get to those later.
Right.
Since we already talked about these other ones. So would y'all say that the plank pose and the chaturanga pose are two different poses?
I
Or
would
are we going to
say-
sort them together?
I would say they're different enough.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
So then plank pose, which is basically just holding your hands on the floor in like a push-up position
Mhm.
without lowering yourself to the ground. So let's try. I guess we can try and sort that.
So it's half of a push-up.
Mm-hmm.
Like
You're holding it. I think it's a Gryffindor or a Ravenclaw.
Mm.
As far as, because again, this one is one, because some, like, it's not your exercise plank pose, because like exercise plank pose, which is where my mind initially went to, which is where like your elbows are on the ground
Yeah,
and
your
you're just holding
your forearms
forearms are on the ground and then you're holding your core. This is arms out.
The arms are out, but you're also still holding your core.
Right, you're still holding your core.
But I would say, like, if we were gonna split the two parts of like a push-up or a plank into it, this is like the easier part. This is the more accessible part of a push-up.
Right, you're holding
sort of
yourself
thing.
up because once you start bending your elbows, then
That's when it's-
then you
that's where
really feel the weight of yourself.
So I would say this is like a good beginner sort of pose too,
yeah.
where
Mhm.
you're like, this is the part of me that's going to actually be activating muscles and stuff.
I mean, maybe this is a Hufflepuff,
Yeah, I would say so.
you know?
perhaps
Because it requires a little bit of balance and patience, and like because you have to.
but it's not too terribly precarious.
It's not
You're pretty
that
close to the
hard.
ground.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we go into chaturanga.
Chaturanga, yeah. I mean, to me, that seems like, I don't know. I guess more of a Gryffindor. But in my mind, I feel like something that's more physically demanding would be a Gryffindor thing. But maybe I'm wrong on
Mhm.
that.
Chaturanga is you're just on the ground.
You're bending your elbows, so you're hovering above the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is pre back bend. I think a Gryffindor is probably appropriate because it's not.
It's like in preparation for something more.
It's poised to spring
Mm-hmm.
like a jungle cat.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would say like you're gearing yourself up to go into a more physically demanding pose. You know,
Yes.
it's kind of like a transition in between the two poses,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I would say that's safely a Gryffindor in my opinion.
Sure.
Mhm.
And then after that, when you push yourself up into Cobra, I mean, that's obviously a Slytherin. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a
It's We'd love to disguise our minor bias not having a Slytherin here, but like, that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in my own personal life that I might lean, like I'm a Gryffindor with some Slytherin leanings.
Yeah, I would say that's true only because you are ambitious and you do hustle really hard. So, and that's
Thank
like
you
those
so
are
much.
traits.
I also think, actually, in thinking on it a little bit more, Cobra lends itself not just to be a Slytherin based on like snake connotations, but also
It's more challenging.
backbends can fuck you up.
Oh, true.
Oh yeah,
Like-
yeah. You gotta be careful with your spine.
And those are the ones where people frequently will be like, oh, I can do this. And they see other people in the class doing a more impressive one and they lean farther and then they wind up hurting themselves.
there's nowhere
it's
you
not
gotta
good.
stay in your own lane than in a yoga class. I
Right.
feel you cannot be judging yourself based on everybody else in the
No,
class.
you have to basically just do what do what your body is comfortable with. And yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy in a yoga class to kind of look at the visual of it and be like,
Mhm.
oh, I want to be there. But really, the whole point is for you to get a good stretch in your body. So like if you don't have to go as far to feel a good stretch, awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Like I
Read your
really do.
body and play the game.
I've always had terrible posture too. So I feel like if I tried to like just like jump in right away and keep up with everybody, I could end up like injuring myself.
Yeah. And any time that you start any physical activity having not done it before, you're more than likely going to walk out of that thing sore. So what do we then,
I
Have
would
we
love to go
complete-
into some of the advanced ones.
have we completed our sun salutation?
We have Almost. Let's see what other poses.
You go into down dog from there, right?
So when you go back to down dog, then you hop your feet. Like this isn't a pose. This is a transition.
Gotcha.
But you hop your feet back up to your hands. So then you're in a forward fold.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to talk about that,
Sure.
And that's just like when you're about to go try to touch your toes, right?
That is, you are, yeah.
That's like about where. If you have not done one of these vinyasas, did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
We're all impressed.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's the part where you're gonna reach down to touch your toes, but you're already there, baby.
I'm going to say that forward fold is also Slytherin. It's an instance where ambition is the thing driving you because you're trying to reach your own toes. And if you're even more like flexible, it's one where you'll like be folding your palms down and like putting them so they're like level with the floor.
I will say though, there is an aspect to it that I think is very comforting, especially because they usually don't have you go right out of it, especially like in the beginning or the end. They'll just have you like maybe just like hang there and just be like, be aware of your body weight.
Yeah.
But don't force anything.
I don't see it as an ambitious pose at all because it seems like more restful. Because when you're in class, it's not like they're actively telling you, please reach for your toes. It's usually, this is a break for your upper body, and you can kind of feel a little bit of a stretch, but it's more of a restful
So you think
pose.
Hufflepuff?
I think it's a Hufflepuff. But then I think the only time it becomes slightly more Slytherin-esque is when they make it more active. So sometimes they'll be like, take your first finger and your middle finger and put that around your big toes and pull down.
And that's when you get those sort of stretches. They're like, ooh, boy.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah. So like I think that when you're being more active with it and you're using your hands to pull your upper body down, then it's less restful. But just as a regular forward fold, I would say it's very
Understood.
Hufflepuff.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we're almost done with our sun salutation.
We are almost there. So then you come back up to Tadasana after that.
Gotcha.
And then there you are.
And then we're done. We did it.
We did it. Wow.
Okay. So we mentioned child's pose, but we didn't sort child's pose.
We did not. That's true. Yeah, I mentioned it because it's one of my favorite poses.
For me, I don't have the best knees, so it's one that sort of hurts me a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Because child's pose, for those unfamiliar, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're basically curled up on your knees and like leaning forward.
Yes, you bend your knees and then you are your upper body goes over, So yeah, I could see if you do have tight knees, it would not be a restful pose. And I forget that.
It's like a more chill version if everyone's like, everyone get down, and you like got down and like covered your head like fire drill style. Like that's what you're doing, but it's like a very relaxed version of that.
Sure.
I always saw child's pose as hands out in front.
It is.
Okay, so it's almost more of a prayer.
I think I've been doing that pose wrong every time I do it then.
Well, I mean, there are different versions of it. So you can either have your knees directly under you, or you can do your knees wide and have your upper body in between your knees with your hands out.
I see.
And then also sometimes if my shoulders and my arms are tired, you can do a modified version where your arms are behind you.
I see.
So there's a lot of different variations, but the classic is that your knees are under you and your arms are in front of you.
And that usually comes like at the beginning or ending of class, right?
Yeah. I mean, and also you use it to take a break. Usually most yoga instructors at the beginning of class, they'll say, okay, class, I'm going to go through this sequence. I'm not going to build in a break for you. If you feel that you need a break, you can go to child's pose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually what the purpose of that pose is like a break from all the craziness and to like catch your breath.
Gotcha.
Hufflepuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would need like
I feel like there's a lot of
break.
Hufflepuff poses in yoga.
Oh yeah, because it's like a very, it's like you're doing something good for yourself, very nurturing.
Yeah, and just
self-care.
chill.
All right, I think we've touched on our basic poses. Should we jump into the more complicated ones?
I think we should.
All right. What are we starting with?
We are going to start with eagle pose.
Okay.
So that is also known as Garudasana, and basically it's when you wrap your arms around themselves and then you bend your knees and you wrap your top leg over your bottom leg. So you're basically just like wrapping your arms and legs around each other.
So this is a standing pose.
A standing pose.
Just to try to paint the visual picture.
So you're standing up, and then if I was going to instruct you, I would say take your right arm and put it underneath your left arm and then wrap them around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, okay, bend your knees, lift your right leg and put it over your left leg. And then you can cross it. And then if you have enough flexibility, you can even wrap your right foot behind your left calf.
So it's like hooking on to the back of it, basically.
If you're going that far, you don't have to. You could just cross one knee over the other and you're still in the pose.
And then so the arms are pointed up and the legs are pointed down.
Yes. And so then the challenge usually is to keep your upper body like upright and work on your core. And it's also like squeezing the reproductive organs and it's good for like digestion, circulation.
And somebody who was assigned female at birth, you're squeezing the reproductive organs. If you're a man and your testes are being squeezed, seek medical attention immediately.
Well, yes. No, they would. I don't think that it would. I mean, I guess it depends on how things are arranged down there. Maybe it would squeeze. I don't know. I don't own a pair of testes, so I don't know how it works.
I'll tell you next time I try it.
Please report back.
Okay, will do.
Sorry, I'm 10. All right, continue.
I love it. I don't know. So I was just telling you what it is. I think this is a Slytherin pose because you are all snaked around yourself.
Yeah, the best way I can describe this, if you can't get to a computer to take a look, it almost looks like a person's trying to turn themselves into like a Twizzler.
Yeah,
like just like trying to just snake around themselves, twirl up, and kind of sit, but not really.
Yeah, you're kind of sitting, but not.
It look like I'm starting to sweat just looking at pictures of it.
It's hard. And it does require a lot of balance as well, because you're balancing on one foot while you're doing all this weird twisting.
Which actually lends itself, I was initially thinking maybe this was a Gryffindor, but the balancing component seems like it might make it more Slytherin, because the element of like a Slytherin is like valuing the craftiness. Like in order to be crafty, you need to be orchestrating in a House of Cards like fashion where like all these things are so perfectly meticulously aligned. And in this case, like sitting down into any pose in yoga is immediately like, oh, this is going to be a rough ride. Like chair pose is one that will always get me, which is, we're not going to sort it, but it's just literally like you lean back and you hold your arms out and it immediately you feel that.
It gets you in what way?
Like just your core. Like the longer you're holding any of those like sitting into poses,
right,
immediately is like, oh, here's my ab workout for a while.
And the thighs.
Yes, and thighs.
Out of all of these more advanced ones, is this like one of the harder ones to do?
I think each of them are more difficult for different reasons. You know, I think this one is difficult because of the balancing and also the flexibility involved for different areas. So, for example, in your arms, with that twisting action, if you have any sort of lack of flexibility in your shoulders or your wrists, you're gonna have a hard time with that. And then as far as the lower body, you have to have, like, it does stretch your hips a lot. So I think it involves a lot of things, which if you're doing yoga right, every pose should involve your whole body. But this one directly, like every single
You're not getting away with it.
Yeah. Because there's other poses like Tadasana, for example, where you're standing there and you don't necessarily have to stand perfectly.
Sure.
Okay.
I feel good about calling this one a Slytherin then.
I'm going to call this a Slytherin for sure.
Let's move on to tree pose.
Yes. So let's do tree pose. Tree pose is actually less challenging than this one, in my opinion, at least physically. So tree pose is basically you're on one foot and then you take the other foot to balance. You can either put it on the inside of your lower leg or on the inside of your upper thigh.
You're making a triangle with
You're making like a number 4.
Oh yeah.
With your legs.
If you're trying to get a good visual of this one, imagine like when you go into a yoga class and the yoga teacher is sat on the floor, you know, with their legs crossed, crisscross applesauce, and their arms are together against their chest, and now take that and like they're standing with one leg. But the other leg
just stretch it up.
But the other leg is still trying to do.
trying to follow that, and I was like, "What?"
But the other leg is still one leg's still trying to do crisscross applesauce, but one is standing straight up. Yeah, it's like if Pokemon evolved.
Of crisscross applesauce.
Sure.
Into
That's the next
standing
one.
crisscross applesauce.
Yeah. And then usually the hands, you can do different things. Most people do them in prayer pose, but then you can also reach them up,
Mhm.
to kind of
To
absorb
a YMCA
the energy.
pose.
Yeah. This is what I think of when you think of like a yoga instructor.
Oh, absolutely.
They would be doing this to show how chill they are, but like I can do some advanced stuff. Just you wait and see.
Cover of Yoga Journal. Absolutely.
Exactly.
This feels more Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff to me.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a mental challenge to stay in this pose. You have to pick what they call a drishti, which is a specific point on the wall or something to just kind of fix your gaze on so that you can keep your balance. And also just kind of mentally not think about it and just, focus on your breath and that kind of thing in order to not tip over.
Gotcha.
Right.
So I feel like because this is more of a mental game and it requires like a lot of patience and balance, that I would call it a Hufflepuff. But now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's more Ravenclaw. I don't know.
What do you think, Reed?
I would say like maybe this is like a Ravenclaw, only if it looks like it'd be the time for you to really try to like collect yourself
Mm-hmm.
for the next pose that might be more arduous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it actually has to do with like the hand and foot arrangement will dictate as to whether or not it is a Hufflepuff or a Ravenclaw.
True. Because the feet, like the more peaceful, easier way to do it is if the sole of your foot is right up against
Mhm.
your leg versus what Reed was talking about, where the foot is doing a crisscross applesauce type thing, which is much more difficult to do.
It's a
And
medical
so
term.
probably the much more difficult one would lean Ravenclaw, and the slightly easier would be Hufflepuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
And also the more correct term for crisscross applesauce would be the lotus pose. So if your foot is I don't know how to describe this. When your foot is like in front of your thigh, kind of digging into your thigh, that's half lotus.
Mhm.
Because one of your legs is in lotus.
I see. Let's shift poses.
Let's shift to Warrior 2. So this is a classic pose, Warrior 1 or Warrior 2, but basically your front leg is bent, your back leg is straight, and then you have your arms out and you're looking out over your front arm.
So you're lunging and making a parallel line to your arms and legs. Or
Yes.
your legs, your
And it's
arms are parallel to
Warrior
your legs.
2, also known as Virabhadrasana.
It's the pose that most reminds me of like when like the Power Rangers are about to start fighting and they're all just like in a pose.
They all hit it.
This is like one of their poses, like let's go putties,
Yeah.
because I'm a grown adult
This is always
with references.
This is always the pose that when I'm in yoga class,
That
I
makes
notice
sense.
how much arm hair I have. Because
You definitely are focusing on, you're focusing on your arm and you're trying to like level out.
right.
The thing that it makes me aware of is how like lumpy my wrist is.
Speaking of arm hair, Michael, I might outgrow you eventually.
No way.
I've been on testosterone for only 4 months, dude.
You can try.
There's a whole patch coming in on my hand that I can see that's going to get as dark as the rest of this.
Wow.
So we're going to give you an arm hair update in a few months, folks.
Get ready for that.
I'm a big fan of Reed's glow up. I just have to say.
Thank you, honey.
So do we think that this might be, I'm strangely leaning Ravenclaw just based on more like an architectural sort of angle.
That's interesting.
I would go straight up Gryffindor.
That's what I was. I think
Okay.
it's Gryffindor because it's like you're a warrior, you're brave, you're going into battle. Like that's the basis of this.
That was what I
pose.
initially thought, and then I was like, maybe it's from an angle.
You're overthinking it, Ravenclaw. Here's
Of course
why.
I am.
Because remember, it was like part of the secret, or maybe a TED talk. That person was talking about the power poses that you're supposed to do before you go do anything.
Mhm.
Like you're literally just supposed to like make yourself as much of like a starfish as possible and open up your
Oh,
body.
sure.
Reminds me of that because I feel like it's a very empowering of the poses.
It is super empowering. Like when you do this and you're doing it right,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm a badass.
Yeah,
It's
anything where your
true.
extremities are going, like even from like a lizard brain's point of view, allowing yourself to be as vulnerable because your soft belly
Sure.
is not protected by your phalanges anymore. Nina,
Sorry, Philandy is a really great
who's
word.
been on the podcast before and is a scientist, probably cringing. Sorry, Nina. And to say like, I don't come at me, I'm unprotected is a very strong power move to make.
And Warrior 2 does allow you to move into a few other poses pretty easily. Like I think, what is it? Triangle or inverted triangle, which are like more tricky.
Yeah, I mean it's
a little bit.
Yeah, I mean you can. The fun part about a flow yoga class is that you can kind of go from one thing to another, and absolutely from Warrior 2 you can go into reverse warrior, you can go into side angle pose, you can go back into Warrior 1, or you could go to triangle pose, you could go to half moon. I mean, there's a lot, and I don't want to name off too many because we're not going to sort all these poses.
Right. But Warrior 2, like again, going off of like it's an action pose that allows us to transition.
You can go into something else. Yeah, it's like like initiating other things.
Yeah,
gotcha.
All right, what's our next pose?
Yeah. Oh, can I go back?
Yes.
1 second. Sorry. What I was gonna say is like almost like in astrology when there's a cardinal sign and they're like a thing that starts things.
Like a bird.
Yeah. Anyway, the next pose that we're gonna talk about is dancer pose, which is Natarajasana. I hope I said that right.
How would I know?
Natarajasana, I think. So basically, dancer pose is like the classic pose that you would see a hot girl put on her Instagram when she's doing yoga. You know?
Yeah, this is when
it's
you
the beach shot.
Yeah, and the caption's always like, "You have to take life as it comes," and you're like, "What does that mean with that pose? What's going on?"
I truly don't understand some of the like Instagram logic on things where it's like inspirational shot and then like a long paragraph about just like life and beauty, and like I get that, but then it like goes on to just a personal struggle or like a story from the day.
Instagram doesn't seem like the platform where you're supposed to be live journaling, but it is the most successful like social media app.
Man,
right now.
I miss LiveJournal, guys.
Oh my God. I loved LiveJournal. My screen name on LiveJournal was Ink and Blood.
Wow. Is it still active? I'm going to go
It's
cyber
very
stalk you.
private, but you could probably see like it was like a friends only. So you could see like the splash page that's a friends only page where it's like super 80s because I used to go to a lot of 80s clubs in high school. Yeah. Anyway, I put a lot of poetry and like collages. I was on Photoshop 1.1.
Ooh.
Nice.
And I had a scanner, and
so you were able to highly customize your live journal.
Oh yeah.
What about you? You had one?
I had a LiveJournal, yeah.
What were you putting on yours?
Oh, a lot of just like upsetting, depressing, teen angsty posts because that was you know
the ones that like get your friend's attention just enough, but doesn't make anyone too worried.
Well, it was also like I did need to just like get that out of my system, otherwise it was gonna make me go crazy.
No, it was around the time that like we all as a society made the wrong move to start saying, what if every thought goes online?
Well, and it
what
was
if every instinct.
It was my way of limiting friends' access because everybody, like, I didn't have a MySpace, but I did have a LiveJournal, and I, like Katy, was like pretty tailored and what was like.
Yeah.
Although I did have some public postings, but for the
most
part, they were friend posts.
If you're not around our age, because I think this was a very much like our age's demographic. Sort of thing.
LiveJournal was one of the first real blogging platforms.
Yeah.
And emo kids took
for
to it
for younger people. Mm-hmm. I think like Zynga was right before and then LiveJournal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like, you know, very like big part of the emo culture, especially I grew up in LA and I went to like all the rock shows and that kind of stuff. So it was like, after you would go to a show, the next day there would be pictures up on LiveJournal and
yeah, but MySpace was nipping at its heels, and then we were never the same again.
But dancer pose.
Sorry. This is a really fun detour. If someone brings up LiveJournal, I could go for days.
The
I'm
riffs
sorry.
are my whole cup of tea on this pod, baby. I'm never going to read these books.
So yes, dancer pose. So basically, to explain what it is, other than the fact that it could be an Instagram pose, is that you are standing on one foot. You pick up the inside of your other foot as you've like bent your leg, and you lean forward and you kick back with your foot. Does that make sense?
Basically, the reason why it's called a dancer pose is because you probably need to at least have the flexibility of one in order to do it.
Well, and your other arm is like held out in front of you.
That is true. In like a very pretty dancery way.
It's basically your one arm is reaching out, the other leg is reaching back, and your arm is holding it, correct?
This is correct. Yes.
So that's the best visual representation we can do of
I'm
this
just
pose.
realizing that it's very difficult for me to explain these poses without physically demonstrating them.
Yeah.
Maybe there should be a visual guide for this episode.
Oh, there definitely should be, but am I going to be on top of it and definitely upload the images? That is yet to be seen.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, if you would like pictures, I volunteer as tribute
Okay.
to model these poses.
Oh, you'll
So-
model the poses?
Yes.
So if there aren't poses attached in the description, it's because Katie didn't send them to me.
Pre-drama! And no, if we do, we'll probably post them up on the Twitter page.
We can do both. We can do both.
No, I'll do it. This is
Okay.
a fun project for
That's
me.
great.
Okay. And so then I would say it's a Ravenclaw because
Great.
to me, similar to a lot of balancing poses in yoga, this is a mind game to stay
Mhm.
in it because so some yoga classes have mirrors and some don't. I do better in this pose when there's no mirror because if I don't see myself, then I can just do it versus if I see myself, then I start wobbling.
You focus on the form and you get,
I'm like, oh, my foot's not there right and this and that. And it's better
it's
if
a
I can.
Ravenclaw thing to do.
Yeah, and I feel like this is one of the ones that has, like, if you're at the level that you're doing this pose, you're probably like what they like call in the gymnastics, like competitive cheerleading world, hitting the pose, you'll know whether you're like in that realm of like I'm getting
Just because
this
your
pose
body,
or not.
like your muscle memory is so like attuned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a long time to master it as well. Like this isn't something that on day one of trying yoga, you're going to get to a level that you really want to be at.
Sure.
Like it would take years to kind of get to the full expression of the
Yeah,
pose.
because it's not because like this is one of the ones that like isn't even just like regular like bouncing on one foot. You're also like by leaning forward and like also tipping your other leg back up into the air, you're messing with your center of gravity a
Yeah,
little
because
bit.
your center of gravity is going in a few different directions. And you have to really balance it.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. I think that's definitely like a more cerebral sort of Ravenclaw-y kind of move.
And with that, I'd like to thank you, Katy Dolle, for joining us once again to be sorting.
yay.
If we want to be finding you more on the internet, where can we search you?
Absolutely. Well, I do have some inspirational posts on my Instagram, so I'm sorry in advance.
That's fine.
But
Totally
yes,
fine.
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Katy Dolle, KatyDolle. And I have a YouTube channel where I have recaps of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, as well as like sketches and vlogs. So you can find that. And that's basically it. And I host Scramble Comedy at the Pack Theater 2 Sundays out of the month. It is a comedy brunch variety show. It's very fun. And yeah, I would tell you the date of the show, but I don't know when this is coming out. So if you just look it up, it's at Scramble Comedy.
Yeah, it's on the Pack website.
Yeah.
Great. If you want to be following more from me, you can follow me at Belated Media on Twitter. If you want more from Reed Brice, you can follow them at That Dang Dingus. You can also follow the podcast at sortinghat_pod. You can give us a review on iTunes or just like tell your friends, hey, because we're on Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, we probably exist there. And word of mouth is going to probably be our best way of advertising.
I want to thank you so much for like teaching us all these things. I think it's I'll just be everybody's mom for a moment and say it's good to be active, but don't feel too stressed out about where you are in your life. I think yoga is a good demonstrator that it's all about like being realistic with where you are and then trying to better yourself with whatever you are working with.
Absolutely. And I would say anybody who says they can't do yoga because they're not flexible enough, that's not what it's about. Everyone can do yoga in their own way.
Yeah, I just know, and I'm thankful that we once got some feedback about being body positive, and I just wanted to put out there that I take that seriously, and I was really grateful for that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go in and be fit and be happy over anything else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. No matter what shape or size you are, everybody be happy with your bodies.
Yes. And namaste.
All right, have a good life.
Bye.